Richard Chartier. I'm a sound artist. In 2009, I went along with a friend of mine, Lynn Myers, who's a visual artist in Washington, D.C., and she was the recipient of a Smithsonian Artist Research Fellowship, SARF, and she was working at the American History Museum. I went along with her, and she said, "You've got to come see this stuff that I'm working with." She was working with time and the aspects of time. And so I went and met Stephen Turner, who's the curator of physical science for the Museum of American History's collection of 19th century acoustic apparatus for scientific demonstration. That's why I have this. So we're walking around, and he's showing me different instruments and stuff, and it was really fascinating. And he opens a cabinet, and this is in the cabinet. This is about probably 4 feet wide and 4 feet tall. This is an invention by German physicist Rudolf Koenig, and it's called the Grand Tonometer. It was built between 1870 and 1875. It's the only instrument of its kind in existence. It is a precise set of 670 tuning forks, and it expresses a frequency range, I'll give you this, from 260 hertz to 4,096 hertz. So basically it's 670 tuning forks that provide perfect pitch at the time. Perfect pitch for 4 octaves. So if you think of 4 octaves on a piano, divide that by 670 tuning forks. So the largest ones are about this tall, and the smallest ones are about that tall, which you can't really tell. Those are my microphones. That's one of the smallest ones. So obviously that's a very high frequency. So he made each one of these by hand, which to me is very neurotic, and I love neurotic things. I love precision-based things, beautiful things. It was this kind of obsessiveness that was showing repeated gestures, and which translates to minimalism. So I was very fascinated by this, and I thought, okay, I've got to do something with this. What can I do? So I applied for a Smithsonian Artist Research Fellowship, and my idea was to explore this collection, which is so many instruments and so many strange things that I don't have images of, but we'll focus on this. I said, okay, I'm going to record all of them. So I recorded 670 tuning forks over 3 months. So I got the fellowship, and Rudolf Koenig was known as a philosophical instrument maker, which in the late 1800s there was not an acceptance of sound being a wave. Sound was considered a particle, which to us now is like, okay, a particle? So it's like little bits of things were hitting you. But it was a wave, but at the time perceived as a particle. So the study of sound was not considered physics, it was considered philosophical. So philosophical instrument makers were making these things that were demonstrating science to people because it was considered a particle. And acoustics at the time was considered physics. But sound was not considered acoustics. So, it was a cusp period, let's put it that way. So in late 19th century Paris, mainly upper class citizens would visit the ateliers of these instrument makers, these philosophical instrument makers. And they would come and they would, wear long gloves and be fancy. And they would have demonstrations done for them on scientific, things. So it was very chic, and everything was new at the time, and so something was always coming up, like some new exciting thing was coming up. So people would come back, and also at the time after you saw these instruments and you saw the performances of these instruments and the demonstrations, you would exit through the gift shop, and you could buy them. Little versions. Obviously, you're not going to buy the Grand Tonometer, but you would buy these little things, and you would take them home, and you'd place them in your home to show that you were, of a certain class, and you were, appreciative of science and the arts, and it would gather dust. So the idea was that what you were witnessing or experiencing was a sound seance. That was the term at the time. And it was a gimmicky name, but I was fascinated by the name of this. I was like, okay, sound seance, that's kind of like what I do in performances. It's like presenting sound as an experience, it's not necessarily musical. So the Grand Tonometer was then brought over, after it was made, with a bunch of other scientific instruments, and it was for a World Expo, and it was purchased by West Point. And it was used for scientific instruments for the next, I think, 50, 60 years. Then it was given to the Smithsonian. And ophthalmology still uses technology that was based on the studies that were done with this. So I don't know if you go to the eye doctor and they do the glaucoma test, that's all based on tuning forks. And it was all based on the usage of this. So my SARF experiment, Smithsonian Artist Research Fellowship, was really this combination of art and science together, because the curator, was like, why do you want to record these? Or I would be using an instrument and recording it. And he said, well, that's not how, that doesn't work like that. It's not supposed to do that. And I was like, okay. So I was recording lots of these things. The process, I'll tell you quickly, was that I had, if you can see here, there was a whole nother row here, but this was my first day when I came. So they're all wrapped up in these little boxes. So every day I'd have to come, we would take them off with little white gloves, wrap them up individually, put them in little padded boxes, put them in another padded cart. I would trolley them down to the basement of the American History Museum, and I could not find a place that was quiet enough, so they provided me with a space, and they said, oh yeah, we've got this space. It's the old Smithsonian Folkways studios, which haven't been used for 20 years. So that's where I sat and did the, oops. I don't know where it went. I messed it up.
Which one do you want?
Oh, any of the little things. So that's where I would strike them and then record them. So 670 files later, I then had to go back and edit them all. So it took a long time. So now what I've done, I finally finished it. It took a long time because I could not listen to tuning forks after that 3 months. I had to take a rest. I also did a performance at the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden in Washington, D.C., which what I'll perform today is kind of a mini version of it. That piece was an hour long. But the last day I was at the Smithsonian, I was walking out, and Stephen Turner, the curator, showed me this picture that was in the paper. And so this old newsprint thing from, like mid-'70s. And there was the Grand Tonometer, and it was in the old Arts and Industry Museum section of the Smithsonian Castle, the big red castle of the Smithsonian. And I finally realized, I know this instrument. I saw this when I was 7. And I remembered standing in front of it, and it's in a big glass case. And I remember looking at it and not understanding it. But it was kind of that, okay, it was always meant to be, or something. So now the Smithsonian, after I finished all of it, I donated a DVD that has the 24-bit recordings of 670 edited tuning fork audio files. So now I'll do a little performance. And this is taking a wide variety of different tuning forks, repurposing them. It's very subjective. It was more about creating the kind of sound seance idea. So there's also some recordings, field recordings within the spaces of the Smithsonian, as well as lots of tuning forks too. So if you could turn down the lights.